Hi, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on the channel tonight. I had promised when I told you about the 22 books released in February that I was dying to read, that I would come back with a list just as long of books for March. So these are the books that I have discovered that are being released in March that I am very excited about and think you might be too. So the first book I want to talk to you about is called Revelle, and it is by Lissa Mia Smith. It will be released on March 8th, 2023 by HarperCollins US, and it is 464 pages, so rather bulky. And let me tell you what the synopsis says about this one and why I'm so intrigued by it. Inspired by Moulin Rouge and set on an island in a magical version of Prohibition-era New York, Revelle is a breathtaking YA standalone fantasy full of dazzling magic, romance, and mystery from debut author Lissa Mia Smith. On the island of Charmant, magic flows like bootlegged champagne, and fantasies can be bought for the price of a gemstone. Lux Revelle, star of her family's fantastical show, knows that splendor is just an illusion. With prohibition threatening their livelihood, her family struggles to make a living, watering down champagne and patching holes in their sequined costumes. So when the son of Charmant's wealthiest family makes her an offer, everything the Revelles need to stay in business, in exchange for posing as his girl and helping him become mayor, she can't refuse. The moment Jameson Port sets foot in Charmant, he can't shake the feeling of familiarity. An orphan with as few memories as gemstones, he's desperate to learn what happened to his parents. But as he delves into the island's secrets, he risks angering the wrong person and discovering a truth that just might break his heart. When Lux and Jameson accidentally meet, the sparks that fly are more than her magical enchantments. But keeping a secret from powerful people is a dangerous game, one that could destroy them both. So inspired by Moulin Rouge, Prohibition era, sort of fantastical and YA, really interested to see how this book goes. It's also a debut, which I'm always, supportive of. And I'm really excited to see what this one might bring. Let's see what the next one is. The second book on my list for today of March releases is Pineapple Street, a novel by Jenny Jackson. That one will be released March 7th, 2023 by Pamela Dorman Books, and it's 304 pages. Here's what I know about Pineapple Street. Darlie, the eldest daughter in the well-connected, carefully guarded, old money Stockton family, followed her heart, trading her job and inheritance for motherhood, sacrificing more of herself than she ever intended. Sasha, middle class and from New England, has married into the Brooklyn Heights family and finds herself cast as the Riviste outsider, wondering how she might ever understand their waspy ways. Georgiana, the baby of the family, has fallen in love with someone she can't, and really shouldn't have, and must confront the kind of person she wants to be. Rife with the indulgent pleasures of life among New York's one-percenters, Pineapple Street is a smart, escapist novel that sparkles with wit. It's about the peculiar unknowability of someone else's family, the miles between the haves and have-nots, and everything in between, and the insanity of first love. So I love that we have the three women here, and we'll sort of follow that saga through time. I'm also interested and intrigued by the privilege. I think it's interesting to read about those who have more than I can ever imagine. It's certainly not all I want to read about, but it's definitely a take on life that I don't have a lot of experience with and love to explore. So we will see what Pineapple Street has to offer and dig into that one. The next one is called What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez, and it is by Claire Jimenez, publishing on March 7th, 2023 by Grand Central Publishing, and it is 240 pages. Here's what we know about this one. A deeply powerful, raw debut novel of a Puerto Rican family in Staten Island who discovers their long-missing sister is potentially alive and cast on a reality TV show, and they set out to bring her home. The Ramirez women of Staten Island orbit around absence. When 13-year-old middle child Ruthy disappeared after track practice without a trace, it left the family scarred and scrambling. One night, 12 years later, older sister Jessica spots a woman on her TV screen in Catfight, a raunchy reality show. She rushes to tell her younger sister, Nina. This woman's hair is dyed red, and she calls herself Ruby, but the beauty mark under her left eye is instantly recognizable. Could it be Ruthy after all this time? The years since Ruthy's disappearance haven't been easy on the Ramirez family. It's 2008, and their mother, Dolores, still struggles with the loss. Jessica juggles a newborn baby with her hospital job, and Nina, after 4 successful years at college, has returned home to medical school rejections and is forced to work in the mall folding tiny, bedazzled thongs at the lingerie store. After seeing maybe Ruthy on their screen, Jessica and Nina hatch a plan to drive to where the show is filmed in search of their long-lost sister. When Dolores catches wind of their scheme, she insists on joining, along with her pot-stirring holy roller best friend, Irene. What follows is a family road trip and a reckoning that will force the Ramirez women to finally face the past and look toward a future, with or without Ruthy in it. What Happened to Ruthy Ramirez is a vivid family portrait, in all its shattered reality, exploring the familiar bonds between women and cycles of generational violence, colonialism, race, and silence, replete with snark, resentment, tenderness, and of course, love. So again, a family story. I also love reality television. So the idea that this young woman who's disappeared shows up on reality TV, I just love that. Also a road trip. So it's the, Thelma and Louise kind of throwback that I adore. And this whole family, along with the snarky, friend of the mother, Irene, they're all going to travel together to try to find Ruthy. Whenever you have a group of people contained in a small area traveling together, interesting things are bound to happen. So can't wait to pick this one up and see what it is about. The 4th book on my list is When in Rome by Liam Callahan, nationally best-selling author of Paris by the Book, which I have not read. This is coming out on March 14th, 2023 by Dutton, and it is 336 pages. So this is When in Rome by Liam Callahan. From nationally best-selling, award-winning author Liam Callahan, the story of an opportunity to start over at midlife, a chance to save a struggling convent in the Eternal City, and the dramatic reemergence of an old flame. Meet Claire, 52, desperate to do something new and get a fresh start. Enter the chance to go to Rome, home to a struggling convent facing a precipitous end. The city beckons Claire, who's long had a complicated relationship with religion, including a missed connection with convent life in her teens. Once in Rome, she finds a group of funny, fearless nuns in a gorgeous villa, beautiful runs throughout a color-saturated city, and a chance to reflect. It all leads to her unexpected question, should she join the convent? And an answer that startles her as much as it does those closest to her. It also startles Marcus, a once buzzy actor, devastatingly handsome, who is eternally in love with Claire. Marcus has come and gone from Claire's life since college, but now reappears in Rome just as she's about to decide what's next. As Claire searches for her higher calling, she finds the key to her future may lay in her past, and involves an actual key. The nuns swear it unlocks nothing, but on a night when choices and voices swirl, Claire finds a long-hidden lock. A look at faith in oneself as much as a higher power, and love, romantic and familial, lost and found. This is the thoroughly charming story of one woman who sets out to rewrite her past and future, only to be surprised by the plot twists life plants when in Rome. I love this. So, I went to Catholic University at Notre Dame, so a lot of interest in that lifestyle. I also love that the protagonist here is 52. So we don't get a lot of books with protagonists who are in midlife. I'm 49, and 52 feels right around the corner, whether I like it or not. And I love that this protagonist is in that stage of her life. So that's relatable to me. And I'm intrigued and willing to dive into this one to see what she decides about her future. So the next one I have on my list, this is number 5, I believe, and I should have said, I have 11 today, and we'll have 11 more later in the week for March. So I had 22 in February, 22 in March. And this next one is called Dust Child, a novel by Wen Fan K Mai. And I may not be pronouncing that correctly, but Wen Fan K Mai is what I think it says. That person is the international best-selling author of The Mountains Sing. So this will be published on March 14th, 2023 by Algonquin Books, and it's 352 pages. And again, it's called Dust Child. From the internationally best-selling author of The Mountains Sing, a suspenseful and moving saga about family secrets, hidden trauma, and the overriding power of forgiveness, set during the war and in present-day Vietnam. In 1969, sisters Trang and Quinn, desperate to help their parents pay off debts, leave their royal village and become bar girls in Saigon, drinking, flirting, and more, with American GIs in return for money. As the war moves closer to the city, the once innocent Trang gets swept up in an irresistible romance with a young and charming American helicopter pilot, Dan. Decades later, Dan returns to Vietnam with his wife, Linda, hoping to find a way to heal from his PTSD, and unbeknownst to her, reckon with secrets from his past. At the same time, Phong, the son of a Black American soldier and a Vietnamese woman, embarks on a search to find both his parents and a way out of Vietnam. Abandoned in front of an orphanage, Phong grew up being called the dust of life, Black American imperialist and child of the enemy, and he dreams of a better life for himself and his family in the U.S. Past and present converge as these characters come together to confront decisions made during a time of war, decisions that force them to look deep within and find common ground across race, generation, culture, and language. Suspenseful, poetic, and perfect for readers of Min Jin Lee's Pachinko or Ya Jessie's Homegoing, Dust Child tells an unforgettable and immersive story of how those who inherited tragedy can redefine their destinies through love, hard-earned wisdom, compassion, courage, and joy. I loved Pachinko and Homegoing, so this is, of course, right up my alley. Again, we've got dual timelines, 1969, in Vietnam, and then folks who are going back to Vietnam or trying to get out of Vietnam in modern day. I'm just, ready to read anything that reads like Pachinko or Homegoing. So, interested to take that one on. The next one on my list is The Mostly True Story of Tanner and Louise. And this is by Colleen Oakley. This is blurbed by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who I love, and I know you love. It's blurbed by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it says, an absolute blast. This was published, or will be published on March 28th, 2023 by Berkeley, and it's 352 pages. Here's what we know about the mostly true story of Tanner and Louise. 21-year-old Tanner Quimby needs a place to live, preferably one where she can continue sitting around in sweatpants and playing video games 19 hours a day. Since she has no credit or money to speak of, her options are limited. So when an opportunity to work as a live-in caregiver for an elderly woman falls into her lap, she takes it. One slip on the rug. That's all it took for Louise Wilt's daughter to demand that Louise have a full-time nanny living with her. Never mind that she can still walk fine, finish her daily crossword puzzle, and pour the 2 fingers of vodka she drinks every afternoon. Bottom line, Louise wants a caretaker even less than Tanner wants to be one. The two start off their living arrangement happily ignoring each other until Tanner starts to notice things. Weird things. Like, why does Louise keep her garden shed locked up tighter than a prison? And why is the local news fixated on the suspect of one of the biggest jewelry heists in American history, who looks eerily like Louise. And why does Louise suddenly appear in her room with a packed bag at 1 a.m., insisting that they leave town immediately? Thus begins the story of a not-to-be-underestimated elderly woman and an aimless young woman who, if they can outrun the mistakes of their past, might just have the greatest adventure of their lives. So another adventure road trip story, this one with an older woman and a younger woman. And the fact that Taylor Jenkins Reid says it's an absolute blast, it absolutely has my buy-in. So let's check that one out. The next one I have on my list is called Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. I love the way this cover is painted in the multiple colors, and it's sort of abstract, but clearly a beautiful face. So it's called Hello Beautiful, and this is by Ann Napolitano, who wrote Dear Edward. That one I am familiar with. It will be published March 28th of 2023, and it is 416 pages. Here is Hello Beautiful. From the New York Times best-selling author of Dear Edward comes an emotionally layered and engrossing story of a family that asks, can love make a broken person whole? William Waters grew up in a house silenced by tragedy, where his parents could hardly bear to look at him, much less love him. So it's a relief when his skill on the basketball court earns him a scholarship to college, far away from his childhood home. He soon meets Julie Padavano, a spirited and ambitious young woman who surprises William with her appreciation of his quiet steadiness. With Julia comes her family. She's inseparable from her 3 younger sisters. Sylvie, the dreamer, is happiest with her nose in a book and imagines a future different from the expected path of wife and mother. Cecilia, the family's artist, and Emmeline, who patiently takes care of all of them. Happily, the Padavanos fold Julia's new boyfriend into their loving, chaotic household. But then darkness from William's past surfaces, jeopardizing not only Julia's carefully orchestrated plans for their future, but the sisters' unshakable loyalty to one another. The result is a catastrophic family rift that changes their lives for generations. Will the loyalty that once rooted them be strong enough to draw them back together when it matters most? Vibrating with tenderness, Hello Beautiful is a gorgeous, profoundly moving portrait of what's possible when we choose to love someone, not in spite of who they are, but because of it. Ooh, so this one's a little twisty, a little bit of some secrets going on in there, some drama and trauma, and we'll see what William brings to this family of sisters. I'm curious to get into that one and find out what the secrets are and what's going to happen. So that is Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. Okay, the next one on my list is called Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. And Etaf Rum wrote A Woman Is No Man, which I have seen. I have not read, but I would recognize the cover. This is published by Harper. It's 352 pages, and it is called Evil Eye. The acclaimed New York Times bestselling author of A Woman Is No Man returns with a striking exploration of the meaning of a fulfilling life and the way our unresolved pasts affect our presents. After Yara is placed on probation at work for fighting with a racist coworker, her Palestinian mother claims the provocation and all that's come after were the result of a family curse. While Yara doesn't believe in old superstitions, she finds herself unpacking her strict, often volatile childhood growing up in Brooklyn, looking for clues as to why she feels so unfulfilled in a life her mother could only dream of. Etaf Rum's follow-up to her 2019 debut, A Woman Is No Man, is a complicated mother-daughter drama that looks at the lasting effects of intergenerational trauma and what it takes to break the cycle of abuse. I love a good mother-daughter multi-generational saga, as you know. Also very interested in trauma and how it plays out in people's lives and how it follows us through generations and how we break those cycles. So from a fictional perspective, very interested in the topic that this book is going to explore. The next book I have on my list, number 9, is called Kunstlers in Paradise. And this is by Kathleen Shine. And I love this throwback 1930s 1940s kind of swimsuit woman here with the bathing cap. Really love that picture on the cover. This one is going to come out March 14th of 2023 by Henry Holt & Co. and it's 272 pages. Here we go. The beloved best-selling author of The Three Weissmans of Westport, once dubbed the modern-day Jewish Jane Austen, brings forth a comedy of generational manners that glides between 1939 and 2020 LA. As Mamie Kunstler and her grandson weather hard times and discover how to make them their own. Julian Kunstler comes from New York City to LA, like many a lost 20-something, to find a job writing in the entertainment industry. But this is 2020, and his temporary visit turns into an extended stay, trapped by the lockdown in a little house in Venice with his glamorous, eccentric, and ancient grandmother. 93 years old, Mamie came to Los Angeles from Vienna at 11 with her parents in 1939, among a wave of Jewish musicians, directors, and intellectuals escaping Hitler. As the months roll on, she begins to tell Julian her stories of the eminent emigres she's known and the magical world they inhabited as their old world was destroyed. People like Arnold Schoenberg, Christopher Isherwood, and Greta Garbo. Not quite all her stories, however. The pandemic isolates Julian from his world, but from Mamie he learns of the worlds that came before him and how much the past holds of the future. A tender, sharply wrought comic novel about exile, the power of stories handed down and handed on, and the power of stories held secretly in the heart. Kathleen Shine's writing has been hailed as sparkling, crisp, clever, deft, hilarious, and deeply affecting by the New York Times, and those qualities stand out more than ever in Kunstlers in Paradise. Here, Shine weaves together the story of a family of Jewish immigrants just after they fled from Vienna to LA in the 1930s, and life in the pandemic, to craft a beautiful, often humorous examination of the identities we inherit and assume, and what it means to be displaced. Kunstlers in Paradise is the coming-of-age story of an indecisive young man coming into his own and his eccentric, worldly grandmother as they both discover that history does not end. So this one, much like the other one, a much older woman, this time a young man, and part of the same family, with differing perspectives, differing sets of circumstances that bring them to live together and share their stories. I am definitely interested in hearing those stories and hearing how they interact with one another and change each other's lives. So that is Kunstlers in Paradise by Kathleen Shine. Then we have, this is the 10th book on my list of March releases, Two Wars and a Wedding by Lauren Willig. And she is the author of The Band of Sisters, which I have not read. And this one, Two Wars and a Wedding, will be published March 21st, 2023 by William Morrow, and it's 448 pages. From New York Times best-selling author Lauren Willig, a dramatic coming-of-age story with a dual timeline and a single heroine, a bold and adventuring young woman who finds herself caught up in two very different wars on both sides of the Atlantic. September 1896. As an aspiring archaeologist, Smith College graduate Betsy Hayes travels to Athens, desperate to break into a very male-dominated field and find work at some of the world's most famous excavation sites. In the midst of the heat and dust of Greece, she finds an unlikely ally in philanthropist Charles, Baron de Robecourt, one of the few men who takes her academic passion seriously. But when a simmering conflict between Greece and Turkey erupts into open warfare, Betsy's archaeological sites become battlefields, and she falls into the grim and heroic task of nursing the wounded. As the world around her is irrevocably changed, Betsy finds her heart pulled in multiple directions. June 1898. As the Spanish-American War begins, an older and wiser Betsy Hayes is searching for her former best friend Ava, who she last saw in Greece during the Greco-Turkish War. She believes that Ava might be with the Red Cross headed to Cuba, so Betsy herself joins the Red Cross and follows Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders straight to the heart of the fighting. As she enters the war zone, dark memories of her last war resurface, and her need to protect old and new friends intensifies. With an unforgettable cast of characters set against two often overlooked but dramatic periods of history, Lauren Willig spins a compelling and heartwarming story about friendship, falling in love at the most inopportune moments, and fighting for what is right. So this one really interesting because I know almost nothing about the Spanish-American War and the Greco-Turkish War. You know, we learned about the Spanish-American War in high school, but I don't think we even talked about the Greco-Turkish War. So this is one of those opportunities for me to learn something about history through a fictional encounter, and I love that. So really interested to hear about the story of Betsy Hayes and what she's going to do as she follows these two different wars and they impact her life. So I will be curious to see how this one turns out and what I can glean about these parts of history that I don't know anything about. The last one on my list for tonight, the 11th book on my list of March releases, is called Beyond That, the Sea, and it is by Laura Spence Ash. It is going to be published March 21st of 2023 by Celadon Books, and it's 368 pages. I really like this cover. It's got the rocky, you know, outcropping and the woman looking off into the distance. Again, we see the two airplanes up there, so we know that this is probably going to be a war story. This one is blurbed by Meg Wolitzer, the author of The Female Persuasion, and it says, "With deft, beautiful prose, this novel is as haunting as it is complicated." So that got my attention. Here's what I know about Beyond That, the Sea. A sweeping, tender-hearted love story, Beyond That, the Sea, by Laura Spence Ash, tells the story of two families living through World War II on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean, and the shy, irresistible young woman who will call them both her own. As German bombs fall over London in 1940, working-class parents Millie and Reginald Thompson make an impossible choice. They decide to send their 11-year-old daughter, Beatrix, to America. There, she'll live with another family for the duration of the war, where they hope she'll stay safe. Scared and angry, feeling lonely and displaced, Bea arrives in Boston to meet the Gregorys. Mr. and Mrs. G and their sons William and Gerald fold Bea seamlessly into their world. She becomes part of this lively family, learning their ways and their stories, adjusting to their affluent lifestyle. Bea grows close to both boys, one older and one younger, and fills in the gap between them. Before long, before she even realizes it, life with the Gregorys feels more natural to her than the quiet, spare life with her own parents back in England. As Bea comes into herself and relaxes into her new life, summers on the coast in Maine, new friends clamoring to hear about life across the sea, the girl she had been begins to fade away until abruptly, she's called home to London when the war ends. Desperate as she is not to leave this life behind, Bea dutifully retraces her trip across the Atlantic back to her new, old world. As she returns to post-war London, the memory of her American family stays with her, never fully letting her go, and always pulling on her heart as she tries to move on and pursue love and a life of her own. As we follow Bea over time, navigating between her two worlds, Beyond That, the Sea emerges as a beautifully written, absorbing novel full of grace and heartache, forgiveness and understanding, loss and love. So I love the dual settings between America and England, the affluent family versus the less affluent family, and how this is going to impact this young woman's life. I just think this is really intriguing and really special. I love the dichotomy and sort of watching the change happen. So I think that will be a great read. Again, it's called Beyond That, the Sea by Laura Spence Ash. And that is the 11th book that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. So I have 11 more March releases that I want to talk about. It's been really exciting for me to dig around and find out what's coming in the upcoming month. And of those books, which ones I'm really interested in and want to share with you. So I found 22 for March. As I said in my February videos, didn't want to put them all in one video, so I split them up between two. And I will be back later in the week with 11 more books that are going to be released in March for you to take a look at and decide whether or not to put them on your TBR. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and the subscribe button and come back and watch the next videos as they come out. Remember, the March Tournament of Books starts March 8th, and I will be coming to you every day to talk about the pairings and the playoffs and see who is winning the tournament. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.